All right, I'm gonna start us off with our introductions. Again, I thank you all for being here, for joining us today. I'm Hadar Suskin, President and CEO of Americans for Peace Now. I'm joined by my colleague Max Albertite, who many of you probably know already. And we've got one of our two guests in and are gonna kick things off and hopefully be joined by the other. So with us today is our friend Aziz Abu Sarah. Aziz, some of you might know, those of you who perhaps have participated in our APN trips to Israel-Palestine over the last few years. We've worked with Aziz and his colleagues and partners at MEJDI on those trips. But we are not here particularly to talk about that. What we're here to talk about today, and really to hear from Aziz and his colleague Maoz, who should be joining us any moment, is really the work that they've been doing together, the remarkable work, I should say, they've been doing together, particularly since October 7th. And you will hear it from them, but both Aziz and Maoz are people who have lost family members, have suffered greatly, as have so many, through this conflict. And yet what they are doing, again, is remarkable. They refuse to allow that to push them apart. Instead, they are taking this moment and coming together as a Palestinian citizen, as a Palestinian, as a Jewish Israeli, to say we need to be speaking out together and we need to be working together toward peace. Many of you have probably seen their TED Talk. We've shared it a number of times and we'll do so again in the chat later. And probably are aware that Aziz and Maoz had the opportunity to meet with the Pope not that long ago, which I don't know, isn't something I've ever done, so that doesn't come around every day. So again, Maoz, we are having some technical difficulties, but I think he will be with us very, very shortly. And until then, I want to start off with Aziz.
He is logged in under Michal name. He had a
Ah,
problem with
got it. Thank you, Aziz.
his.
So we should
So
have
we
him on.
need to find Michal on the in the audience. Michal
Excellent.
Amir.
So we should be able to pull him up in just a moment. So again, I'll start off introducing Aziz a little bit more as a Palestinian entrepreneur and a peace activist, the co-founder of Internact International and MEJDI Tours, again, with whom we have worked and continue to work, the former executive director of the Center for World Religions, Diplomacy, and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University. And Aziz, it's nice to see you again. I last saw you, I think, in Tel Aviv in March.
Yeah.
It is good to be here with you. We're still working on getting Maoz in, but while we're doing that, why don't you just tell us a little bit about, this moment and what you two are doing and how it's coming together.
I think it's important maybe to just mention how Maoz and I reconnected. So Maoz, like me, is an entrepreneur. He also works in tourism. So we had a connection already from years ago, but we never really got to know each other. We met maybe once, maybe more for 5 minutes. We used Abraham Hostels, which he's one of the founders. And then on October 7th, I heard from a friend later, I think that night, who one of my tour guides and said, do you know that Maoz's parents were killed? And so I decided to send him a message and just offer my condolences and tell him that this is not in my name, what happened, and that I'm standing with him and I cry with him. And he responded immediately. And honestly, in those moments, you never know what you're gonna get. You might get angry messages, you might get, which I totally would have understood as well, but I thought it's important to do that, to just send that message and hello, Maoz. And we connected a week or so after and just started connecting again and again, and then realized we have so much in common. And partially what we have in common is our loss, my brother, his parents. There's something about pain that can unify you, especially if you have a similar vision. And so we started doing a lot of work together from actually when we met in March, Hadar, we were leading a trip together. We spoke to a group of rabbis and we had rabbis, teachers, so on coming on a trip. And so we did that together, Maoz and I. And then we focused heavily on changing the language and also pushing the public narrative, the public conversation to be different. So we've gone everywhere, have talked to everybody in media, in organizations, in conferences, in meeting politicians, in meeting the Pope, as you mentioned earlier, and just trying to push for a change of how this discourse is happening and building a movement as we're doing that. Met with dozens of Israelis and Palestinian peacemakers and trying to come up with a map forward of how do you move forward from where we are today. I know Maoz has been working really hard on the July 1st event, and I'm sure he'll talk about a lot more. So there's so much going on. It always feels not enough, but there's so much going on.
Thank you, Aziz. So I'm going to take a minute and introduce Maoz. Also, because we were slightly discombobulated at the beginning, I skipped our housekeeping. So I want to remind everybody, we want you to ask questions. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom to do so, not raising your hand. As we get into the conversation, we will be looking at those questions and address as many of them as we can. So thank you for that. Maoz, thank you very much for joining us. You, I think, missed our little introduction. We kind of introduced the talk. Oh, you could. Okay, great. So just for folks who don't know Maoz, first of all, you should, which is good that you're here today, but he is an Israeli social entrepreneur and a peace activist, also has founded several tourism companies in Israel and throughout the Middle East. And many of you probably know him from the Abraham Hostel and the tour brands, which so many of us have used and have been part of our trips that we've participated in and led over the years. So hello, Maoz, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here with you. And it's a real privilege to listen to Aziz because I was off the screen, so I could listen to Aziz very not thinking what I will need to say. And every word that Aziz is saying, I'm learning something new. Even if I read it again and again, I get a new perspective, a new something in the tone that is really I highly appreciate. So
good. So Maoz, Aziz just told us a little bit about how the two of you reconnected, and obviously the very painful, difficult circumstances of that. But maybe you want to tell us a little bit about, how you went from that, that moment of October 7th and your own loss in your family to taking that and taking what I'm sure was, just incredible pain and sadness and deciding that this work is what you need to do with that.
I will start, if you won't mind, by again saying what is being shared between Aziz and myself, but between so many others, Palestinian Israelis. We recognize October the 7th as an opportunity. And I'm privileged to say that because I lost both my parents on that day. We realized that the status quo, that we can manage the conflict, or there will be no outcome or consequence to the occupation and the oppression. We thought it's manageable, and we both realized we knew it before, but we are now using it as an opportunity to change the future and envision a new future. A new future of equality, of justice, of peace and reconciliation. And we are using all we have done before in our business life and career, in our peace life. We are bringing it all together with many others, individuals and organizations, civil society organization. Of course, Peace Now is one of the leading organizations. And we are not going to compromise on less than sustainable and lasting peace. We have a goal, we have a destination, and this is the destination, is a lasting and sustainable peace. And now we are working very hard in order to make it happen. And this webinar is part of those actions. So we are working so hard. I think both, not just Aziz and I, but many of us are as busiest as ever. We are working so hard because first, there is an urgency. There is an urgency. The war is still waging. Civilians are being killed. Hostages and prisoners are being held in in
Activity.
captivity. And if we'll continue on the path we've been going in the last century, 100 years, we're going to reach a number of victims that no one could imagine, like in October 7th, what will unfold in the next 8 months. So the catastrophe can be behind our imagination. So there is a very urgent, there is a lot of urgency. And what brought me into it is that I was broken. I was literally broken and drowning in an ocean of sorrow, pain, and agony. And then I had a dream that I saw that with our cry and tears of humanity, of all mankind, we can be healed and cured. And those tears can wash the blood from the Holy Land. And our tears can bring or can create the path to peace. And I've decided on that night when I have this dream to choose this path in order to cure myself and to heal myself. And then those that are around me. And I can say we are 5 siblings. 4 of us totally changed our career and life, and we are now peace activists. My brother, again in London, is now doing an event with Hamza Awad and Mira Awad, 2 Palestinian peace activists in Oxford University. And my eldest sister, is organizing one of the organizers of the July 1st peace event. And my other sister is now working closely with the Forum Circle and meeting and entering schools and Jewish youth, Israeli youth, to dialogue with them and to share the pain, but also the possibilities of the future. Yeah, so it's a journey, and we started a journey, the journey of peace.
I love that you guys are using the word journey, because I mean, that really is an incredible journey that you're on. I mean, you did a TED Talk, which has reached mass numbers of people. You met with the Pope. I mean, what's it like to be doing all of this work and to be engaging with this so constantly, while also being somewhere that is not where all of it is happening? I mean, this is all happening at home for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, one, it's incredible to be able to do that work, because we know that if we are to reach a peace agreement is because of this work. And I'm sure you guys know exactly what we're talking about, because we are all part of this journey together. The reason we are going to these events, we are going to TED, we are going to meet with the Pope, we are trying to meet with anybody who's willing to listen, is because we understand this is beyond just what Israelis and Palestinians can do. And it must have the buy-in, and it must have the solidarity and the pressure and the support of many, many other players around the world. And somebody like Pope Francis, I'll give you an example, is so powerful in the way he was able to help us. One simple thing is just the fact we met with him at Arena di Pace. There were 13,000 people there when we were meeting with him. It was aired on live television in Italy as he spoke and said to everyone in Italy in the arena that I don't want you just to listen to these guys. I want you to reflect and think how to help this movement. These were the words of Pope Francis. And then every Italian newspaper and television for the week after has been in touch with Maoz and I. And then it went from there. I just was at an event in Portugal, and my friends in Portugal all like, oh, we saw the whole thing on television. It was on primetime TV. Had friends in Brazil, friends in Argentina, friends literally all over the world saying your words have been amplified by what the Pope has said and by him giving you that opportunity, not just for me and Maoz, but for all of us who are working for peace. So it is important to realize that we need that kind of solidarity, especially in a time where it's not as common yet. And even when he went recently to the G7, he took our message with him. We pushed hard to have people from the peace movement to be invited to the G7, but the fact we weren't there, we had an ambassador there. And to have someone to speak on our behalf there who has an influence on the leaders who were attending resulted in something. The language changed of how the leaders there spoke about the civil society and Israelis and Palestinians working together. That because partially of the support of this work of Pope Francis.
Yes, exactly. And it's starting with a personal journey. This is also that need to, I want to emphasize. It starts with a personal journey, a decision that each one of us can make. Aziz and I and you took it, that we want peace, that peace is possible. So it's starting from a personal journey. And then when you meet on the path, brilliant people, like Aziz, like Pope Francis, but so many others. And we've been encouraged on social media. For me, it's on the streets. There is no passing day that someone I never met before is approaching me and congratulating me for the work I'm doing, we are doing. And one of the questions also, just to reflect the meeting with the Pope. So before we went on stage, we were in the backstage with, I think, 3 or 4 Italian reporters, journalists. And they all asked us the same question. Is peace possible? Is peace possible? And Aziz and I, we traveled to Italy from Brussels. And the 10 or 2 weeks after, like 2 weeks after meeting the Pope, it was the EU election. And what we answered them is that you are the answer. You are the proof that peace is possible. Because 80 years ago, there was war waging in Europe. In 2 world wars, 10 millions of people. The same people, nationalities that are sitting here in the arena. Those that the Pope called them peacebuilders. They were killing each other only 8 years ago. And now, the European flag, you can see it on all official buildings throughout Europe. Everyone are using the same currency. No borders, no checkpoints, and voting to the same parliament. So of course peace is possible. And now, because we are meeting so many knowledgeable and experienced people, I realized, I don't know if I shared with you, Aziz, yet. It's been 80 years since 75, since the end of the Second World War. And 79 years since the foundation of the UN and the International Court in Hague. And nearly 30 years since the last big peace agreement throughout the globe. And we forgot the legacy of peace. We forgot the importance of making the enemies of the past into the partners of the future. And we must renew those vows. We need to renew those vows. It's not just for the Israelis and Palestinians. It's for humanity. Because humanity is there is a crisis in humanity. And like the ripple effect of what's happening between the Jordan between the sea to the river is now contributing to the polarization, the Islamophobia, the anti-Semitism in such a great and tragic way. We can also do it the opposite. When there will be peace between the river and the sea, in the Holy Land, in the Promised Land, it's gonna impact the entire humanity. And it's up not just for Aziz and I say myself, for the Palestinian Israelis peace movement and coalition. It's for humanity. It's for the sake of humanity. We must make peace between the river and the sea as soon as possible, before it's going to be too late. Before it's going to be too late.
Thank you, Maoz. I want to ask both of you, you talked about the personal journey, I think, Maoz, you said. How, your work, again, I know you've both been involved in this space since long before October 7th, but the reality feels so different now. How are you seeing people, are people in your space, family, friends? Maoz, you talked a little about your family, but, positive and accepting the work that you're doing? Are you getting pushback or negativity from your own communities also? How are you? I mean, we see, those of us who are paying attention, see the strife happening on the Israeli and the Palestinian street. How is that playing out for you in your personal capacity?
Aziz will keep the turns, so go ahead.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
good so far.
How has it affected our families and people around us and friends? I mean, look, it's been a nightmare because few days after October 7th, comes October 7th, I have multiple friends who've either been killed or hurt, people I worked with who had family members who've been taken captive and so on the Israeli side. And then on the Palestinian side, my friends in Gaza are living in hell. Like absolutely hard to even know what to tell them. Sometimes I have one friend I told Maoz about who lost 50 people in his family. It's you don't know where to start. And yet when I told him what I'm doing, he was extremely supportive. After we did Maoz and I our TED Talk, he was one of the first people I reached out to. And his words to me were, "I'm proud of what you're doing." So we have those, I think both of us have those kind of friends. My family, I'm very fortunate. My family have gone through the same journey I've gone through. They weren't supportive of this work in the beginning when I first reached out to them 25 years ago and said, this is what I'm doing, and I'm gonna do some stuff with Israelis and Palestinians. My dad was convinced that every Israeli works for the Shabak and every Israeli is gonna get me in prison and they're just trying to get me to say the wrong thing so I'll be arrested. That was his what he was convinced of. And with the years, they've been attending some of the work I'm doing and coming to some of the events, and they not maybe as active as I am, but they all have been extremely supportive. There are friends who are not. I think, like I mentioned, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, and we can't dismiss hurt and pain. We can't even dismiss anger. Anger is a normal thing in these kind of situations. You reading about and knowing people who getting hurt and killed and so on, and not everyone can respond the same way Maoz have responded and Magen have responded. I think some people sometimes need more time. Some people have to struggle through that. This is I have a lot of appreciation for Maoz's bravery because I couldn't do that. It took me 8 years of a journey to get to where he was able to get to in few days. But yeah, I think what people need in these times, instead of attacking them and fighting with them and all of that, is to cry with them, is to be with them, is to show them that you care and to show them that you understand the pain they're going through. This is the worst time, I think, to go to someone who's been directly hurt and start lecturing them. It's the time to go and give them a hug. It's a time to go and say, I'm with you. I understand your pain. I think one of the most moving moment for me through this whole last 9 months was a friend of mine, an Israeli friend of mine, who called me on, I think it was October 8th or 9th, and he lives abroad right now. And he called me and said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, what's happening? He said, I'm angry and I'm calling because I need someone to cry with. And he just started cussing at everybody. He went left and right and then started crying. And then for the next, we put on FaceTime, and for the next half an hour, the two of us were crying together because we both were angry, we both were sad, we both were heartbroken. And sometimes that is also needed. So we have, I think, a mix of different reactions and friends. But in the midst of all of that, I think what we are trying to do is to show what can be done from our pain. And we always say pain, anger, those things, they're like nuclear power. You can either use it to destroy, or you can use it to make light. And we're trying through and from our pain to do something that brings light rather than brings destruction. We are the biggest threat to extremism. Our existence, the fact we are together, the fact we can be on this live stream or webinar together, that is the biggest threat to those who say war is the only answer. And our response to them is that we intend to surprise reality until it changes. And that's what we're doing. And so, and our friends, our families, people around us, I think if you're patient, they come around. And if they're not with us now, they come around.
Yeah, totally. Just I will summarize. Many of my friends are coming around. I get at least once a day or twice a day a message from someone that said, Maoz, I couldn't watch your messages on social media. I was so angry and I couldn't understand how are you willing to forgive and to reconcile, and who are you going to make peace with? We blocked you. And it took us 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And now we understand that you are right from day one. How can we help you? How can we be part of your journey? We want to join you. So, and everyone, even those like from the other side, they will still say, we do want peace. As them, do you want peace? Yes, we want peace. So this is also something in the mind that we start like seeding in those that are still supporter of the war. Okay, we still seed in them that they want peace and just the word peace. And yes, we live in a bubble. Okay, let's be honest. We are in this webinar 147 people. We live in a bubble, but this bubble is getting bigger and bigger. This is the beauty about it, because hope, like, it's growing. Okay, we are practicing hope, we are practicing peace, we are practicing reconciliation, and we get better and better in it, and we are affecting others. So yes, we live in a bubble, but the bubble is getting bigger and bigger, and soon we'll be the majority. And then everyone will want to join our bubble. Okay, so then it's going to be one happy humanity. There will always be the extremists. And then, but again, if we'll offer an alternative, if we'll offer a very clear vision, and we'll prove that this is the only way to bring, to cure what's painful. And each one of us has something different that is painful for him. For one, it's equality, oppression, security, safety, dignity, freedom of movement, of speech. But we can cure all this on our journey, the journey to peace.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier in this conversation, Maoz. You mentioned the idea of managing the conflict and sort of the way that things were even before everything went, I mean, as wrong as it could possibly go on October 7th. Can you talk, both of you, can you talk a little bit about what, I say we as in the peace building movement, but really you who are there and dealing with it very up close and personal, are actually up against when we talk about this clear vision and the steps that we need to take to get there?
I want to comment on the concept of managing the conflict, because it got so popular for a while and was even popular among people in the left, people who are pro-peace, is like, okay, we can't solve it, let's manage it. Let's kind of maintain some kind of status quo. And what we learned is that status quo never exists. It only goes down. It only gets worse. We might not feel it and understand it at the moment it's getting worse, but that's what happens. And I think of so many people, politicians, weeks before October 7th, who are talking about how things have gotten so good, how everything is manageable, even as we saw rise of extremism, even as we saw coups and democratic values, even as we saw more violence in the West Bank. They were looking at everything and saying it's manageable, and it's not manageable. The only way to end conflict is through peace. anything alternative to that, it's not a solution. And so that's the first thing I think we're against, is the idea that it's all manageable. I get a little angry at people who say, oh, we are outraged at what happened, because my question, we should have been outraged before. You don't have to wait until things get so horrible to be outraged. How many people, as Maoz said, how many people have to die before we go, okay, this is it? We really have to take this seriously. And this is to us, the people here in this webinar, to Israelis and Palestinians, internationals, and to our leaders across the world. I really appreciated President Obama when he was asked about it. And he said, I think of the days when I was president and what I could have done that I didn't do. And I think we all have blood in our hands. Those were his words. And I think unfortunately, he is right. Many people, indifference is probably one of our greatest enemies. People who feel, there's nothing I can do. I'm only one person, or people who feel this is manageable, people who think if we have a longer war, if we kill more people, those are the things we're going against. And what we are trying to say, indifference is not an option. It's not, we don't have the ability, the privilege to be indifferent. There is no way around that. We know the price of this reality, and the price is more death, and we keep reading about it every day. We keep seeing horrific images every day. So it's not possible. People who say there is no hope, Maoz always like to say we create hope. I say I don't always feel hopeless, but we always have an obligation to work harder. We always have an obligation to try our best to make sure something like what's happening now never happens again, that we come to an end of this, to a solution that's we done, not let's just have a break for another 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, and then we start again. We have to get to the root causes, and the root cause is that we don't have peace. One of my favorite poems comes from Samih al-Qasim. He's a Palestinian Israeli citizenship who used to be the editor of one of the main or largest Arabic newspaper in Israel. And he wrote this poem. He says, "The day I'm killed, my killer will rifle through my pockets, and he will find tickets, a ticket to peace, a traveling ticket, a ticket to peace, a ticket to the fields and the rain, and a ticket to the conscience of the humankind." And then he goes, "I beg my killer, do not waste such a thing. Do not ignore these tickets. Please take these tickets. Please, I beg you, go traveling." And I think this is what we should reflect on right now. So many people have been killed, and we have those tickets in our hands. A ticket to our conscience, to our humanity, and a ticket to peace, to a reality where we have fields we can go to. And I hope that everyone listening to us knows that what we're up to against is people who don't want to do this journey, maybe afraid to do this journey, angry, and then those of us who are willing to use those tickets.
Thanks, Aziz. It's very strong. Very powerful. I will try, Maxi, to also to go back to your questions about the status quo and managing the conflict. I will speak again from a personal behavior, or I invested most of my time in bridging and creating a shared society between Jews and Arabs within Israel. I was focusing 99% in that field because I also think it's very important. And that's what I see in my daily life. And for most Jewish Israelis, the West Bank, Gaza, is behind the mountains. Okay, it's somewhere really, really, really far away. And when I was on a 4 or 5 day seminar in the West Bank exactly 2 years ago, when I met many Palestinian activists, not necessarily peace activists, political activists, civil society activists, and some peace activists, I came to two conclusions. One is that the occupation is Israel's most successful operation. It's sad and crazy as it sounds. It's where Israel investing its most resources, talents, budget, everything is being invested in the occupation of the West Bank. And it's been done in such an holistic and successful way that Israel has been able to fragmentize the Palestinian society, not to even to village to village, but to building. And no freedom of movement, no freedom of speak, no freedom of gathering. It's all blocked, even if it's not a physical wall, it's a mental wall. Each house is being surrounded by a mental wall. And so I said, this was the first conclusion. And the second, that it's not sustainable. It cannot go like this for much longer. But I never imagined in my worst nightmares that it will be my parents to pay the price. Because I was fooled. I wanted to be fooled by the most invested barrier that humanity ever built. The deepest, the highest, most sophisticated electronic device, most invested per meter. The wall that shaded my parents' house. The wall between my parents' community in Netiv Asara to Gaza. The writing was on the wall. The writing was on the wall. But we refused to look because we were fooled again and again. We were promised again and again that we won the ultimate victory, that we deter Hamas, that we disarm them, that we revenge. I don't know if we'll have time to speak about revenge, but revenge is a symbol within, unfortunately and sadly, within the state of Israel nowadays. And we were again and again been promised that Israel brought security and safety to our communities. And of course, it was a lie. Everyone knew it's a lie. Wall is not bringing security. Bombs not gonna bring security. Orphans, parents who lost their children in Gaza, it's not bringing security. It's just gonna create more violence. And now we woke up. We woke up and we see the writing on the wall. And if there are 143 people that now see the writing on the wall, it's a huge step forward, huge step forward. And now we need to act, to take the walls down and hire the security and safety and equality and dignity.
So thank you, Maoz. I want to get exactly to that. So first of all, just when you were talking about the occupation, about the realities, our colleagues at Shalom Achshav talk about how, the occupation has occupied Israel, right? That the political apparatus and will and so much of those resources that you were talking about of all different kinds that have gone into perpetuating the occupation for all these years have in many ways overtaken the politics of Israel entirely. So that just resonated very strongly. What you were talking about, now is the time to act. So I want to ask, and a few people asked questions about this. I mean, we're very grateful to have you here today and talking to us. This is an audience, obviously, that is very open to your message and agrees. How are you talking to, and I'm asking you personally, but also how do you think people in the peace movement should be talking to those who don't agree with us, to the right in Israel, to the Hamas supporters, both in Israel and in Palestine, and frankly here in the US? And just as a side note, every webinar we ever have with Israelis or Palestinians, people ask the question, understandably, what should we here in the US do? And I don't think it's your job to tell us what to do in the US, but like you both said earlier, we are living in the ripples and the reflections of what's happening there, and we are dealing with the implications of it here. So how are you talking to, the folks who are not already on board with your messaging?
Okay, first I'm approaching those that are with us on board and on the journey to amplify our voices. We must amplify the voices of peace. It's through social media, through family dinner, WhatsApp group, any platform in your universities, working place, invite us for more webinars. Send on those platforms, Aziz and I, TED Talk. Amplify the voices of peace. This is crucial, crucial. And the second is to build legitimacy to peace and to us. And when I'm saying us, it's at least the four of us. I don't see all the others. To build our legitimacy as the leaders of the future. We are the leaders of the future. And we must build our legitimacy. And this webinar for Aziz and I, it's building our legitimacy because it's the first time we're speaking with the Americans for Peace Now. So it's great. And we have done it with Pope Francis and on TED, and we do it a few times a day with different groups. And then it's your representatives. Okay, there is an election coming in the US. And I don't see, and then talk to your representative and ask them, how will you promote peace between the river and the sea? How will you promote equality? How you will promote dignity and freedom? And then there are many Israeli politicians and other leaders that are coming to the US. Ask them, what's your vision to Israel? What's your vision between the river and the sea? What's your vision to the future? Because for too long, we didn't force them to answer. So they have no vision. Unfortunately, all Israeli current politicians, their vision to the future is to go back to October 6th. This is their vision. They're offering nothing else. So we must force them to come out with a new vision. And this is why we are now working together to build a coalition, to plan a roadmap and to execute. But it's not too difficult also. And now July 1st event will be broadcast in many communities throughout the US. It will have English subtitle. It's a free streaming. So you can do it with your family, you can do it in your community, you can do it in your synagogue, you can do it everywhere in the street. Broadcast it. Just to broadcast it. And then we can amplify it more and more and more. And then if we'll see that there are 500,000, 2 million views, it starts changing the discourse. And we need to change the discourse because this peace is inventable. Peace will definitely happen. This is what Menachem Begin said on the historical visit of Anwar Sadat in 1977. It will definitely happen. The question is, how many will need to sacrifice? How many? And Aziz and I, we sacrificed enough. We don't want to sacrifice more personally, and we don't know others.
Yeah, I'll only add, it's very hard to go and argue with people about ideology, political positions right now. And so we don't really do that. I think often when people ask us that question is, you can go and say, but you're wrong, and the lines here, and the history, and this is what happened. Educationally, it's important people learn, but these kind of arguments rarely have changed people's minds. What does work is giving people a vision. I think when people don't have a political vision, when they don't see a way to peace, a way to independence, a way to equality, a way to safety, a way to security, then they will go toward violence. I think the Hebrew Bible says, where there's no vision, people perish. It's from the book of Proverbs, if my memory is right. And so vision is really important. And that's what we trying to do, is saying we want, when I talk to these people, do two things. We share our stories, because we as a humans connect much better with stories, get people to understand the price. You want to be right, sure, be right, but you have to understand what's the cost of you being right. And the cost, it's people like me and Maoz. And I want to look people in the eye and say, are you okay with that? Are you okay with these sacrifices of people who living there, who are dealing with this reality, who are losing everything they have because of this, I'm right. And then adding to to telling our stories, connecting with people over it, understanding the cost, then we go into let's work together for a vision that doesn't include violence, that we imagine a tomorrow that is better, that will bring the equality, that will bring the security, that will bring dignity to all of us. I think without a vision, there's no conversation to have with anybody.
You've begun addressing this a little bit already, both of you, but as we're sitting here talking about the vision for the future, the plan for where all of this goes, can you guys get a little bit into what that vision is? What specifically this vision is that you've become such fierce advocates for?
Maoz and I are running for office together. One of us will be president, the other, no, I'm joking.
He's joking because our wife might be watching us. So and we said we'll announce them together and not publicly. So so don't tell them, please, guys. Don't tell them.
Yeah, we'll keep this video secret, Maoz. Nobody will see it, just us. No, I mean, there's different things. I can tell you from my point of view, I really don't care so much about which exact solution. Is it going to be a confederacy like Land for All is promoting, which I'm a big fan of their work and I like really their vision? Is it going to be more of the older two-state solution? Is it going to be some kind of form of a federation? Is it even going to be a one state? That's less what I'm worried about. I care that whatever we do, there is a political will for it, there is people behind it, and that we can make it happen. I think that's, and that whatever solution it is bringing those things, what we talked about, the dignity, the security, the freedom, the equality to everyone between the river and the sea, and that it actually can work. So which solution exactly, or where the lines are going to be, honestly, I'm one of those, and I've met a few Israeli politicians, a few Palestinian politicians who negotiated, met Olmert before and asked them about those questions. They've been very close before, but the issue why it never was signed, in my opinion, it's never because, oh, well, 1 meter more, 1 meter less. The issue has always been you have either the wrong leader, you have the wrong people, the wrong American president. You need 2, 3 of those always together, and we somehow get 1 or 2 and not the third. And so that's been our issue. And so we working now and making sure as much as we can that we get the people behind it, the leaders hopefully behind it, the international support behind it. You need all the 3. And if you have only 2, it becomes a bit more challenging, I guess, to do it. I know with the parent circle, I told Maoz recently that one of the stories I heard when the parent circle was founded is that it was Yitzhak Rabin who called people who lost family members and said, I want to sign the peace agreement, but some people will be angry, and I need people like you to support me and say, we want to work with you. He understood heavily the role of people like me and Maoz. And that's how the parent circle inception actually started, from this conversation of bereaved parents with Yitzhak Rabin right before they signed the peace agreement. So today we need that. We need the civil society. You need people like me and Maoz. You need the people on the ground to be supportive, but we also need leaders who are willing to go for it and to say it's time to do it. And if we have that political will, it's not about where the line's gonna be.
Yeah. I want to give the spiritual answer, if you won't mind. We don't have all the answers. We don't. But we know who does. The future. The future has all the answer. And what Aziz and I are trying to do is to create a model of the future in the way we interact, in the way we partner. We are living the future. And this is why we are very effective, and we are energized by our action. And this is why we keep doing it again and again, few times a day now for 8 months. And the plan for the coming future is even more, is at least as busy. And I want to give example, how we practice our equality of the future. So practicing to the TED Talk, we said that if we're gonna use the same terms for describing how we lost our loved one. So if we decide it's murdered, so we'll say my parents were murdered, and Aziz will say my brother was murdered. And now we decide to use the word we lost our loved one, or our loved one were killed. But we are using we're practicing equality. And sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy. And sometimes we're being attacked for it. But then we say, look, but we must practice equality. Because if there will be no equality in our relationship, in our terminology, in our phrasing, how can others follow us? Because they will say, it's a fraud. It's a fraud. So we are practicing it, and sometimes we don't agree, so we dialogue about it. And this is how we see the future. It's already proven, just now in the Russia-Ukraine war, that even if there are two states, it's not promising peace. So so let's say there will be two states between the river and the sea, and then they will wage war on each other. So what have we achieved in that? So it's the values. It's the values that matter. And then what we learned from Pope Francis, a true leader for peace, a true leader, is the importance first of a conflict. If we want to evolve, if we want to rise, if we want to improve ourselves, there must be a conflict. In a place there is no conflict, it's a dictatorship. There is an oppression and an erosion of the others. And then it's for us human to decide to solve our conflict through dialogue. And this is how the future look like. We're gonna dialogue about our relationship, how we're gonna practice equality and security and safety and dignity. Those are the values that are matter. And again, if the border will go here or there, who cares? Who cares?
Thank you both for that. Maoz, I think it's really interesting because we have similar thing. I mean, I think it makes sense and it's understandable for people to ask, well, what do you think the answer are? What's the solution? How do we do this? But I think it's important and really powerful to be able to say, we don't have all the answers. We don't need to have all the answers right now, because so often, again, whether it's individual leaders or organizations, people come to you and say, well, if you don't know this, then what you're saying is illegitimate. And I reject that, because no one can know what the answers are going to be yet. And I think what you two are doing and talking about of modeling that partnership and working toward that better future, even if it is not, defined exactly down to the final period in the agreement, is what we need right now. When we're at that last minute and we're debating the last details, the 1 meter here or 1 meter there, great. We'll all do that. We'll all have something to say about it. But that's not where we are right now. And what we desperately need is what you two are both calling for and doing, which is the action. We need to get past, everybody says they want peace, right? They don't all mean the same thing by it, but everyone will tell you they want peace. And even the people who do mean the same thing, even, here in the United States, in our political sphere, we have supporting a two-state solution is pretty much the standard position. And yet, whether you're talking about organizations or elected officials, for so many people, I say to them, that was a very brave position to take in 1995, but what are you doing about it now, right? And for so many people, the answer is nothing. They're not doing anything to move us toward it, and they, in fact, do a lot of things to often make it more difficult to get closer to that. So I just want to thank you for myself and on behalf of APN and all of us for the work you're doing, for modeling this. I have a little tiny question that admittedly, I'm just curious. When the two of you are just together doing your own work, what language do you speak to each other?
I try
I don't
English.
know if we notice.
No, I will try English.
Yeah.
This Hebrew is impressive. But I personally, I feel more comfortable in English. But
Oh, I mean, I think everyone gets like what you were talking about the equality. And one of those pieces is an issue of language, which we know in general on the ground in interactions between Israelis and Palestinians, you don't have that because, that's part of the language of occupation, quite literally. All right,
But again, just sorry for interrupting,
please.
but it's not the language that creating it's not going to solve. The Hutu and the Tutsi in Rwanda spoke the same language. Okay, it's not the language. Yeah, it will be nice that we speak each other language, but I think it's nice to have, but it's not why we haven't make peace yet. Okay, it will be great, really amazing, but it's part of shared acknowledgement and recognition. So we'll get there.
Yeah,
but we'll get it. It's part of the journey. It's not a must-have to start the journey with.
agreed. All right, with that, Aziz, Maoz, I want to thank you both so much for being with us, and Max, of course. And to all of you who joined us today, thank you very much. I put the link to the TED Talk in the chat, but we will share it again for everyone who was with us today. And we look forward to seeing you both when we come there next time, and hopefully when you are here sometime soon. So,
yeah, and please feel free
soon.
to reach out to us, anybody. Both Maoz and I are easy to find online. So feel free to reach out to us, follow us. We on social media quite a bit. Yeah, thank you so much, Hadar, Max, Maoz. Good to see you.
Thanks, and please watch the July 1st event. The first time more than 50 organizations, civil society organizations, coming together, working together, envisioning together the same vision of peace. Yeah. And it's going to be really huge and a great event. So it's just the foundation of the peace, the people peace process we are starting.
Great. We will share that broadly with our list on social media with everyone. So thanks. Thank you again. All right. Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Bye.